All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is 9:18 a.m. and this is the scheduled and advertised meeting of the EMS Future Metrics Subcommittee. 9:18 a.m. on October 20th or October 30th. You have, I'm sorry.
How many members we've got to make sure we're in the right number?
We need to take a look here. So 1, 2, everybody formally on the big committee, raise your right hand. You are on the right committee. Or on 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, and then I'm representing Sheriff.
You're not participating?
I'm part of this.
Yeah, I will.
I'm not participating.
Okay. And no, understand that no input, no voting, no.
Correct.
And Jeff Gates will be here in a few minutes.
Okay. Well, okay, but you're
Sitting in.
Sitting in for him. Okay. All right.
Are we legal now? Or we discuss? We can't have more than 9.
And I'm not going to take part in the discussion, Mr. Chairman. I'll stay out of the discussion. I just want to hear where we are. Here's Jeff now so that he can take part in it.
Okay.
And now to keep you in mind. Number 9.
We just did it.
My apologies.
No problem. We were late getting started. It's not an issue. Okay, everybody satisfied with the representation, the fact that we, as constituted, will not represent a quorum conducting the business of the main committee? Any objections at this point in time? Yeah, we're good. Okay, you have before you a copy of the minutes from the last meeting. Give you just a second to look over those if you have not already. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to be made to the minutes as presented? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept as presented. Motion, Alicia, thank you. Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Thank you very much. Okay, on the to-do list for today, since last Tuesday, I think we have had a commission meeting scheduled, or we've been requested to provide, or the chairman has been requested to present at the commission meeting next Monday night with regard to the group's progress. Obviously, we'll need to provide him a product for him to be able to present. I think what I would propose is, we were going to come back with some deliverables today. Let's take a look at those and see if we can format those as in our regular committee meeting tomorrow. Propose to him that we let him take a look at that for consideration to present to the board as our progress report. In other words, our regular, presentation tomorrow would in essence constitute his progress report to the commission, if that's agreeable to everybody. So, having said that, let's take a look at what we were going to have coming in as work products today, our deliverables. I think I'd made the note, paramedic skill retention numbers, and we had gotten those previously. Tim, from...
I've got some, I can hand out some of the, I think we went down and listed some of the performance goals that we were going to look at. I think we had 6, and we're going to narrow that down to 4 to 5 or whatever. And so I've got a few that you want to look at those. We can have it for discussion. And I can...
Okay, so you've got that integrated into this document?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
what I have here is, this past Tuesday, we sit down and we discussed some performance goals. Understandable that the way I understand it is like the performance standard is our overall response time. So that's not included with this right now, but our goals. We discussed that some of the goals that we would like to be reporting on, the committee, would be shoot times, skill retention, customer satisfaction, community involvement, hospital turnaround times, and then unit availability. And what I have is I've offered some recommendations. I went back and looked at it. I shared this with our education and training department to make sure that the skill retention is appropriate. What we did, if you will, of course, shoot time, year one, or when we first get started, of course, shoot time, dispatch to en route, wheels rolling, is 90 seconds, 90% of emergency calls. That's per the standard, state standard right now. If you will look over to page 2, the attachment, and it's somewhat identical to what you saw in the Exhibit A, except, and what we did is we combined the IVIO, which would be a vascular access. It's just a needle, inserting the needles either through the vein or through the bone.
Okay.
And then we give a rate there. That's how we measure them. And that's some of the goals. As you can see, if you have an old, I don't know if you have an old copy of Exhibit A, but I do. But that's some of the some of the benchmarks we've looked at, goals that we want to do. In the notes, that's the skill definitions. It gives you the definition of what we look at, what is considered a success in the intubation or the advanced airway, and also vascular success rate. And as I said, the IVIO are combined, and it just narrows it down. Is that good?
Just out of curiosity, how do these rates compare with national standards of practice? Are they-
The national, my understanding as far as the ET success rate, we're above that. It's down around, I think it's somewhere around 62%.
Okay.
Something like that. So we're growing, and like I said, don't hold me to a fact on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what I understand through the discussions with the
But your-
education training department.
But your retention goals here are at least consistent or above national standards?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
That's, okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. Yes. The next, customer patient satisfaction, I sort of narrowed it down just a little bit. I think we wanted to come back with a target on this. What we measure, patient satisfaction, of course, we measure response times, medical care, explaining, reducing anxiety, courtesy and caring, professionalism, knowledge and skill, and of course, pain reduction. We have scores for all of that, but what we do is we look at the overall impression. We combine all those down, and we come up with around a 95%.
Is each one carry the same value, just to average
sir.
all the numbers, or they've got a?
They're weighted
Okay.
a little differently, yes. They are weighted. And their favorable responses, the percentage of favorable responses equals excellent, good, excellent, very good, and good. So we're constantly, over the last several years, been in the 90th percentile, usually between 95 and 97. We've dropped a little bit this year. We're down to a 90, and this is with the target overall impression. I went back and looked at a few years, and also with what we're trying to do, new individuals coming on, onboarding new people, getting them up to speed. I think a target of 95% is attainable, if not more. That's what we're going to hold ourselves to. What this does is the overall impression, it gives you the 95% range. I can go back in as a manager and go back and look at some of these areas, and if we start falling below those percentages, I know that's where I need to address the issue there.
Mike, is this comparable to what the hospital does?
Yes, we look at favorable responses as well.
Okay.
And Alicia helped me out, if you want to comment on any of it, because she's helped me out quite a bit on this. She's
Well, we talked about,
Patient
just as we
satisfaction.
look at each individual patient satisfaction, we use press ganey at the hospital, but what we look at is an overall rating of care. And the overall, to your point, the overall rating of care is made up of the series of questions. Some questions are higher weighted because they know that drives patient overall quality and satisfaction. So, to Tim's point, if that overall isn't hitting the mark, he's gonna have to drill down into what's our challenge and the opportunity to address it, so.
Do you have a lot of processes when you have one that comes in unfavorable? Do you review each one of those to understand?
Why it's unfavorable?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the way we receive this. This is a really good thing. We send our patient satisfaction surveys out with our invoicing or billing. So
You automatically
Wow.
knock 3 points
So,
off.
we do that. We have that, and also we provide online survey. But this is sent out through that with our billing carrier, MSMC, and then they provide this on a monthly basis. So
your constant feedback.
Yes, sir.
Basically. But, is the 95% rate, is that something that is a fixed target that you consistently, or is there an improvement? I know, and I appreciate what you said last meeting, Mike, about you challenge your team to constantly, nothing's acceptable less than 100, for the team. But for this particular statistic, is that typically a set flat rate?
as the target,
As the
whatever.
target rate.
No, really and truly, until we were asked to bring back some type of a target or target score on these things, we really strive for 100%.
Yeah.
And so, but to be realistic and all, that's what
That's
we're
the right
looking. And we do. I mean, we strive for 100%.
I know, I'm just-
Patient satisfaction.
Right.
And so, but to sort of be realistic and I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, but that's obtainable, and
No, I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Obviously, as these, we meet each year and revise the goals and look at the goals. We're at, 95% next year, which I expect to be. I would expect the county to say, well, what about 96%? What about 97%? And you should always strive to get better. I don't think anybody's satisfied with the status quo.
Well, I've sat in your board meetings and watched you do just like that. So-
No, and I appreciate that commitment, because that's what I had in mind by even bringing it up.
Yeah.
So as long as we're,
number 4 is community involvement. It's same thing. It's documented in the old Exhibit A. Of course, 1 year, 35, 37, 40 events in year 3. And we'll reevaluate that on a yearly basis. And that's, community events, CPR, community involvement.
Does football games count?
Not in this, no, sir.
Okay, all right, just make it clear.
We run about 90 of those a year, so we.
90 games.
Yes, sir.
Do you only go to football? What about basketball and other
No, sir.
sports?
No, sir. We have requests for medical standbys for triathlons, 5Ks. I think some City of Monroe has a document that we have to hand out. When they do a 5K, we have to have some type of medical assistance there. But yes, sir, we do that. We can do that. Number 5 is hospital turnaround times. We discussed that. That's unit available time minus facility arrival time. 30 minutes, 90% of the hospital transport, or not 30 minutes, 90% of the time of all hospital transports, which should be current, in the current policy, EMS back in service time equals 30 minutes. So that's state standard, that's what they want us to do, and we strive to meet that now. We do that now, so. And number 6 is unit availability. That was one that was added in. Just looking at what we have now, and when we go to the the model, new model 1411, and just trying to put a number down would be 11 days and 9 nights that we would always have, at least 11 and 9 right now. You know, and that's, to me, that's hard for me to narrow down and to just to say that's what we can have all the time, but that's, I think we can do that.
I thought we were gonna do 90%
Okay.
of what the plan was.
Not,
And it may be that because I think we came up with 1.4 would have been 90%. You're almost gonna have to round it to 2 and see what the percentage is to be
Right.
fair. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You agree with that? So it may be 85%
yeah,
as opposed to 90.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
Yeah.
yeah. That's just, I've looked at this for days. And
I know.
I feel very uncomfortable when we start talking about, you know, to make sure that we have that appropriate amount of trucks online at all. But I think I can be comfortable with that right now. And those are the 6 that we discussed, so.
We're to cut it down to 5. List the 5 that are gonna be the
Yes, sir.
the stated goals.
Yes, sir. And that's,
And then the response time is actually the main goal, and these are sub-goals.
I just usually, I have to separate it a lot of times, but I just use the response times, my performance standard. That's the standard that we have to meet.
That's the overall.
And then that's, the goals are what we decide on. That's the way I look at it, but I mean, I have to find it out.
I follow that
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, but we have to discuss it for our viewers.
I understand, sir.
Okay, so, you know, at this point in time, these are the 6, and thank you for developing it. This is exactly what the group asked for last meeting. At this point in time, you know, Mike, you know, you had originally talked about, you know, selecting 4 or 5. I mean, what's the pleasure of the group at this point in time?
I think we ought to have 5 goals. I don't know which one you'd cut out there. I look at the hospital turnaround time. That's something, maybe it's not controllable totally by them, but at the same time, the quicker he gets the hospital turnaround time, the quicker that unit gets back in service. So that would be kind of inward with EMS to see that takes place and not have that as a goal, maybe. Well, unless somebody has a better idea.
What if, you know, I kind of look at the community involvement and say, you know, can we not just write into the agreement that there'll be a minimum of X number of community involvement events? I don't know if community involvement necessarily has to be a metric, if it can't just be a contract item that says you'll do so many of these a year. You see what I'm saying? It's, the rest of these have performance. You do good, you do bad. Attending a community event's not a do good, do bad. It's a scheduling, it's a trying to be sure you have somebody there. The rest of these are, you can do better, you can do worse, but it's either a yes or no when you attend a community. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, you make a lot of sense.
Well, a community event could be, if you don't feel like there's enough involved after a year, it's looked at yearly, hey, could you increase that maybe two more a year or something like that? So that would be.
I think what we would need to do, since we already have the framework of the contract and the only outstanding issue would be the goals and the deployment model, is this, if it was the agreement of the committee, is actually just move community involvement to Curtis's monthly report. And I prefer not, I don't think we're planning on changing the contract. I think if you open it up, then it's going to be, well, let's change one more thing. So I prefer just to maybe make that a monthly reporting on Curtis's report.
I'll be honest, I don't see it being any more than a monthly report.
Okay. Is that good with everybody else? All right, well, we can effectively take that, that'll give us 5. Tim and Mike, are you comfortable with the 5 that, you know, as we've outlined and explained here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, obviously the biggest challenge is the unit availability, just until we get upstaffed and get some PRN. That's going to be the short term, probably the first year. the biggest challenge that we're gonna have. I mean, these are all, I think, challenging yet realistic goals. The unit availability is probably the most challenging one the first year. There's just lots of different things we'll have to do to achieve that.
Chief Gaddy, from the fire department standpoint, that's,
Only question I got, and I wasn't here for Tuesday's meeting, so I'm trying to play catch up too. Is the shoot time 90 seconds gonna be for 3 years, or is that where we start?
no, that's
Start.
Starts. Just start.
I think that's good. I don't see any issues about that.
Curtis, anything from?
Just one question on unit availability. I know that you spoke to it just a minute ago, but I think that we need a little bit more clarity as to what we're actually trying to measure, because what this says is unit availability 11 days and 9 at night, but it really doesn't give a lot of detailed information about what we're actually.
Flesh out the,
Okay.
you know,
I can provide you a little bit more. What I'm looking at is at a 90% of the time, we're gonna have 11 trucks on during the day and 9 at night. Is that?
With the current staffing.
Yeah, I mean, and as we, as we grow, we can come back and look at that. But right now, I'm very uncomfortable with giving you a for sure until we get this model up and rolling. Okay, and we got to hire people. We got to make sure they're oriented, and then we have some additional policy development and stuff that's going to assist us with this. Okay, but right now, we'll go out on a limb and say it 90% every day, 90% of the time we're going to have 11 to 9.
Which is what we currently have.
Yes, sir.
I guess that's kind of where my question is. Because I know, or theoretically, I think, through the monthly reports, what we're going to get is updates on your progress in hiring additional people, additional units, things of that nature. And I totally understand and agree with that. I guess, to some degree, I'm wondering what we're accomplishing if our unit availability at 85 or 90% is what we have today.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, and I think part of our discussion was against the number of assigned, the 90% was against the number of available vehicles. And I know we've talked about adding a total of 3 vehicles, 1 surplus and 2 new, and when those come online, that should be a part of this number. And that's the only point I'm trying to make. So that's going to take, when you order the two additional ambulances, you've got a plan for staff when you put them online.
This 11 gonna go up when we do that?
No, 11's not going. The 11's going to go up, and also the nights will go to 11 once we get the resources we talked about needing long term. Is that a fair statement?
I'm just.
How you gonna get those resources?
Well, we got to hire, currently, I think we're projecting hiring 25 PRN staff.
And then full-time will be somewhere around 16 to 18, somewhere in there.
How long
You
does it
said back.
15, 18 months.
Okay.
Okay, it takes you so long to get a paramedic or an EMT up and running because of.
Correct.
How long is that?
It takes anywhere from EMTs or orientations, just book 2 weeks. Progress, we're looking at about 3 months. 3 months to 90 days for a EMT. And then it goes on up to from 90 days. If we can hire a skilled, experienced paramedic that's had work in the field, of course that, paramedic, when we're orienting those, is at least 90 days, and it can go up to 120, sometimes more than that. Just depending on how much we have to train. Because of paramedics, of course, we orient, put them on a truck, third person. They have to be, meet all the goals there, and then we put them on a truck as second person. And then they have to do that for a couple of months or so, or a month, and meet more goals, and then they're finally turned loose. So what we're talking about is just like a firefighter, totally turn loose where they can interior go in.
So it would be 6 months from today, if you ordered this truck today, it'd be 6 months before you could, give or take, before you could put those new paramedics on.
Well, yes, that's, if we could hire every one of them today.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
It takes quite a bit of lead time for the truck as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But we have one spare truck that we could start our planning on now.
I think what Curtis, with the unit availability, I sort of think, I understand what he's talking about is that, what are we getting for, we're dropping down, you're just gonna guarantee what you got right now. And I understand that. And that's my issue with it, is I don't know how to guarantee any more until we get involved in it, in building the model. And of course, then we can go and look at it. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the percentages of my QRVs, and some of my trucks are down now, and I'm trying to pull that in. Once we grow the model, I'm sure this is going to change. Okay.
I kind of agree with what Curtis is saying, and I think we should institute a time period. If he's at 12 months, or is it feasible to say at 12 months, we need to readdress 11 and 9. I mean, if you're doing 11 and 9 now, and you got 2 more ambulances going to come, and you're going to hire 25 people, so if you have 12 months to get 1 in 12 people, or 2 in 12 people. I'm hearing 15 to 18 months to get it in service, but that doesn't change this.
Well, I think that'll be reevaluated during the 17 budget cycle. Because, I think the contract, correct me if I'm wrong, contemplates kind of reviewing these metrics annually during the budget process. We're right up on the heels of the budget process for 2016. You're talking 15, 18 months out from that process, 15 months out from talking about the 17 budget. So that can be addressed as a metric. Because to me, the bigger metric is ensuring the response time, and if you're hitting the higher level standards, the unit availability is a little more valuable to some degree if you're hitting the rest of the standards. Does that make sense? And it's going to take you time to ramp up to that. So I see the timeframe being really in line with that budget process, and when we reevaluate that benchmark in light of the budget and everything else each year, we can work our way up or down from those numbers versus trying to iron them out today, because you have that ramp-up period, and that ramp-up period is not going to be long enough, or it's going to be too long to, we're going to be hitting the budget cycle before that ramp-up period to realistically expect to have any kind of movement on that in those numbers. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, so basically, I don't think in March or April, we may not be far enough along to put something in the 2016 contract, but 2017, we should see improvement.
This model, if the whole committee agrees with a model like this, in 15 months, we should, 15 to 18, whatever we decide, I would, say at least 15 months to get this up and running, and then that's when a lot of this stuff, we could start reporting. I can start reporting next week. But it started, the performance goals especially the unit availability. When we get our model up and running, we get everybody hired, the trucks on, then we can probably go back and discuss that during budget time.
Well, I guess really what I'm looking at is, if we're saying that the current deployment is 11 units during the day, 9 units at night, then it should be 11 to 9. It should be 85% of that. It should be we staff and we provide 11 units during the day and 9 at night. Period.
And that's what our staffing metric is now, but we unfortunately we don't always provide that now.
And why is that, Tim?
Staffing
Okay.
and availability units and all. So yeah.
So what you have is you have equipment that you don't have staff to operate?
Yes.
Okay.
Why do we not have staff to operate?
To hire, we have to hire them. We're hiring. We have turnover and we're hiring some.
Well, ask a dumb question. Why are we throwing out 11 and 9 if we don't have staffing for it now? And the, over
This,
the
this,
15
this is
months,
what I'm, the
that's what your
performance-
schedule says.
Yeah, the performance goal is for the 15 months when this model starts. This is, we're not talking about right now. Is that, 'cause I think that's where the confusion is. I'm looking at,
So in 15 months, you're going to guarantee 11 units during the day?
I don't find that,
No.
that's
I
not,
know, we were
that's not
talking
what.
11 and 9 out of the gate. Is that,
I understand 11.9 now, because that's what your model currently does. And plus the 15 months. I mean, we shouldn't wait 15 months, say, okay, now we switch over to this. There ought to be, you know, I've gone through a lot of hiring and everything like that, and you make gradual progress,
correct.
and we ought to be achieving certain levels of what we're targeting at the end of 15 months.
Correct.
And so I'd like to see, and it may be that the 11 during the day goes to 12 or 13 a year from now, or goes to 12, in 6 months. But we need to see that continuous progress.
And that's what I'm saying, but this is what I'm giving. I'm not saying this is gonna be the end of it or whatever, but we're gonna progress
And
up
you know,
through there, but I can't offer you anything else than what I see right now.
right, and I guess what I'm kind of clarifying, for the time period that we're looking at, if we currently are supposed to have 11 day and 9 at night, I understand that we're adding things and we'll be moving forward. And really, I'm not even talking about those units.
Correct. You're
What
talking
I'm
about
saying
right
is,
now.
That's what we say our coverage is now.
Uh-huh.
So if we're establishing that, I think the percentage of time that those units are staffed and available should be much higher, because that's what we already say that we're staffing at.
Okay.
And if it has to be done through a combination of PRMs or part-time people, as well as full-time people, I understand it takes a while to recruit, but maybe, and I know reference has been made to adding additional part-time people. Whatever it takes, I think we need to be focused on having the number of staff units that we are talking about and that we are already supposed to be providing. So really, I'm talking about trying to increase that percentage of time that they are available, since that's what we're already doing, since we're trying to improve the overall system and service to begin with.
What question I'd like, Mike mentioned about hiring, was it 24, 25, something that nature? How many of those will get you up to 11 and 9? Because I'm hearing you don't have enough right now, so how many of
If
that?
we're fully staffed, and my vision of it, if we were fully staffed in 15 months when we activate this model and we start looking at it, and we've got our PRN staff up and running, we've got everybody hired and all, I would foresee this to be a little bit higher than we could be held to, as in a 90%. Maybe 12 or 13 during the day and then 11 at night. That's what you guys are really looking for. Is the more staff. But I can't actually guarantee that right now, because there's a lot of issues in place. That's why, we've talked about this for weeks now.
Yeah.
And I've always been hesitant to give you a number, because I really don't know. I can go back and.
but if you filled all the existing positions you have, not talking about the 25 new or whatever those new are, would you be able to staff 11 and 9?
Right now, if
you filled all the vacant positions you have.
if we have all the vacant positions filled right now, no sick call-outs. Yes, another thing is that, we could do 11 and 9 right now, yes.
Curtis, can I just clarify? So is your question truly, so we have 11 units in the day, 9 at night. Is your question, what % of the time are we actually running 11 and 9
Well,
now?
Yes, because if that's what we're saying that our current service level is, then, honestly, it should be 100% of the time. If someone calls in sick, you call a part-time person, you put them on the unit. Yeah, you may have a couple of gaps in hours that you don't have somebody filling that position on that unit. But overall, that should be your minimal staffing level. And I guess that's where I'm asking the question, because I'm really not understanding if that's the stated objective, why we're not meeting it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
And that's not a budget issue right now, is that correct?
Well, it will be a budget issue, because we have, about 2 call-ins per shift.
Mhm.
So what we'll have to do is you actually have to staff up for those positions. So it does actually become a budget issue, because even if they call in sick, they get sick time, which is an expense. So you're actually gonna have to overstaff.
You remember when we talked
Yeah, I
about?
remember talking about that.
So it does become a budget issue. You're actually staffing for more.
And this is where I made a statement. Go ahead, Tim.
If, right now, unit availability, we're maximum, or we would be 100% at 11.9 right now. We're minimal staffing levels is what we usually look at is about anywhere from 9 to 10 during the day and about 7 at night right now. And what I'm looking at now is that's transport trucks, because if it's staffing levels and an ability to get PRN people to come in or overtime working, we have QRVs. We have coverage, but transport trucks, if you want, that's what I think you're asking for. Our minimal staffing now. Okay. I'm sorry, this is, I was looking at this is minimal staffing when the model's done. Okay.
So right now, you don't have an overhire process where.
We,
Kind of
overstaffing,
floating, if you will.
we're not budgeted to do that. We try to overstaff every shift now if possible. We probably reached that goal, percentages, we probably reached that goal about probably 50% of the time to have additional staffing. And usually when that happens, we have call-outs. So we utilize that overstaffing.
And right now, you fill it in with overtime?
We fill it we fill it, we try to fill it with PRN. Most of the time we fill the overstaffing with PRN. Usually our PRN employees now that we have primary jobs. So when we open up a slot, that allows them to plan to work those days. A lot of times when you have somebody sick out and in 30 minutes we need somebody, it's hard to get a PRN person to come in then if they're not already scheduled, because they've already made other plans. And so we have to either depend on overtime, our people coming back in, working over, or some kind of covering of the shifts.
Just out of curiosity, and this is kind of a side question, but how is the labor market for paramedics now? I mean, what are the challenges that you have in keeping those positions?
It is a challenge. It's as in healthcare, it's a challenge now to the majority are fresh out of school. We tried different types of recruiting methods. We've sent flyers all over the state. We post on the state websites. We do it nationally. You have a lot of requests, but sometimes they don't work out.
Do you guys see the same issues that we see in law enforcement, that you can't find people qualified,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's by credit, by criminal history, by, you just can't find a pool of people to hire?
Well, a lot of our employees, mind you, we have some good teammates, good employees, but the new recruits that we have coming in that have finished the school and all, a lot of times when they actually start their experiences and training on the truck, sometimes they have they go to a different career field. They're like, I thought this was going to work out for me, but this really doesn't work out for me. So, and that's what we're experiencing now. Basic EMT basics. We're starting a program that, and I think it's affiliated in with their agreement, with the 65, 35%, paramedic EMTs, 50 to 65, whatever. We're starting trying to hire more EMTs and grow them to be paramedics here. That's what we found is more beneficial for us to do is hire the paramedics if they're in school, especially if they're in school, if they're halfway through paramedic school, we hire them, we assist them in going to school, obtaining their paramedic credentials, and that works out better for us in the long run than to go and grab a paramedic or recruit a paramedic, let's say from New Jersey or different areas, because sometimes that really doesn't work out.
Find it to stay longer.
Correct. Yeah. To grow, we call it grow paramedics. And so,
I think this may not be popular, but you've heard me say it before, but having the availabilities of these ALS units is critical. I would expect that if you have somebody call in sick, you have paramedics on staff that normally don't ride the truck.
correct.
By state requirements, they're supposed to ride the truck so much anyway. I would expect a supervisor or administrative that carries a paramedic credentials fill in on that truck until you can get that part-time person in there. Because having the availability of these trucks, I mean, that's what takes us down to having one available in the county, and we just need to, so, we've had this conversation before too.
Correct.
But I think it's important that the primary, focus is to keep them on the road. And to keep them on the road, you got to keep them staffed.
I understand.
So,
And as far as the issues with that, really truly, have we been doing that all along in the past? No, but there's no issues with that. But the only thing I would hesitate to say is I cannot lose my control of the service. I can't, if I've got a supervisor on duty and I've got somebody that calls out sick and I've only got one supervisor that day, and if I'm not there, if it's on a weekend, I can't lose that control of my service and put that supervisor on the truck. Because if he has a call and he's taking care of a patient, he loses control of the service then. I have to have some type of span of control. And you understand that? And so, yes, I agree with you in some instances, but really and truly, also we have to make sure we maintain the control of the service. We can do that, but I can't, I can't say every time somebody calls out sick or we're waiting on a PRN person or overtime person to come in that a supervisor's going to be on the truck. I can't do that.
I tell you, with a lot of years of management experience, if the managers have to do some of that work, they find ways to fix the problem.
Correct. And that's correct.
Sounds like personnel, people. I mean, we're looking at 24, 25, but to bring 2 more ambulances on or to go, you're like today, I think you said you're 9 to 10 instead of 11. So really the model that you presented to us, meeting 90 percentile of the time, you probably couldn't do that today. Would I be correct in saying that?
If I understand you, like what you're saying.
If you only had 9 to 10 ambulances instead of 11, that's gonna make your response time longer.
Correct.
Now, when you get up to 11, that's just what the percentile is based on, correct?
Right.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. That without the personnel right now, you can't meet that goal.
Well, I think that's what it makes it a good benchmark at 90%. Because if what Curtis is saying, if we already have 11 and 9, then it should be all the time. But what you're saying is you don't have 11 and 9, you really have 9 and 7. So if you get to 11 and 9, 90% of the time, not at 15 months, because I think 15 months to get to that level is a little long. But if we, say, the next 6 months, or whatever that number needs to be, then 11, and having 11 and 9 is appropriate 90% of the time, because that gives you the opportunity to get up to it, but also creates the expectation that you're going to be at 11 and 9 starting out, and then as we go through our next budget processes, we can talk about getting to 12, 13.
Correct.
And the cost of that, because then it's going to become a marginal increase in cost and what that impact's going to be on an annual basis.
As I said, and please forgive me and apologize, but we've talked about this for several meetings, and I've always been hesitant to give you a figure because I have to be comfortable with it. I don't want to, I'm not going to, like we always say, I'm not going to set myself up to fail. And so what I'm doing is giving you a number that I think we can obtain until we get up and running. You understand what I'm saying? You know, when this model takes place, I'm giving you that starting point that we've been asking for, and that's 11 and 9 right now. Can we do better? Yes, of course, but I've got to give you a starting area. That's what we've been asking here, and so that's what I provided. I know it's low, but like I said, give me a chance to excel and out.
How long do you anticipate it's going to take to fix your current staffing level?
We're hiring as we hire. We're advertising, recruiting, and hiring ongoing. We've got, I think we've got six or eight starting next week in the orientation process. That's going to allow us to for our 24-hour trucks to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and continue to flip the remaining 12-hour trucks. And that's what we're looking at there. So we're ongoing.
Yeah, well, I know, but I mean, you know, to get to your level, what's your target for getting to your current staffing model?
We should be with these, with the 8, and forgive me, but I'm thinking there are 8 that we're having coming on in orientation, and that's when we say 8, we'll have like 3 next week or 4, and then we'll have 2 more like next week. And it's all coincides with, we have to go through CHS in orientation, CMC union orientation, and then they come into us. And those are on set dates. And so that's how we move them into orient. We should be able to be full, fully staffed after this hiring process, I think around 8.
By the end of the year?
Yes, I want to.
But that's at the current model, not.
Oh, I
Current
understand.
model, yeah,
That's
current
9 and
model.
11.
That's 11,
Yeah.
that's 9 and 11.
Right.
At the current model, my goal is to have the 12, all trucks, all transport trucks to 12-hour shifts by the first of the year.
And you'll have full staff. Now, does this 11 and 9 include QRVs?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, we're talking about, that's transport trucks. We're not talking about any QRV.
That's
But
the
that
other reason.
staffing only allows you to change it from 24 to 12. It doesn't do anything.
And we'll be full when we.
Where we're at now.
But what we have now is we have a combination of 24-hour shifts and 12 with these additional 8 that we've had that the county give us. When we flip all that, we can go into all 12-hour shifts and we should be full.
But you'll still be 9, 10 trucks in a day, and
We should be full and.
that doesn't help you with your call out.
Right.
People calling out,
Right,
because
right.
all that really does is put all the trucks on 12-hour shifts.
Correct.
But if you set the standard at 11 and 9, how they backfill
Yeah,
to get to 11 and 9 is a management issue, because there's some efficiency to be gained in doing it in overtime versus additional positions. I mean, that becomes, because I think the onus then becomes on EMS to ensure that the 11 and 9 are there 90% of the time. How they get to the 11 and 9,
Right.
and who's on that truck, you know,
We don't care.
that's not really as much our issue as it is the contract issue. If they're falling below the 90 percentile of 11 and 9, then it becomes a contract issue, it becomes a discussion for us. Other than that, I think you have to leave it up to EMS to manage through that issue.
All right, the next question I got is, when does 11 and 9 come into play? Is it in 6 months, a year, or
I thought he said the end of the year.
End of the year.
end of the year, we're gonna have 11 trucks on the road, 90% of the time?
We're going to be fully staffed at the end of the year, the starting of the next year.
We still have to, I think the issue is we still have to address some policy changes.
Correct.
Which could take a significant amount of time, as well as the PRN staff. Because even if you get fully staffed, we can say, all right, now we can staff all the units. So I think everyone's aware, to the QRVs, only are staffed 40% of the time.
Correct.
We're now changing those into transport trucks, and we have to staff them 100% of the time. So that's why it's a short-term stretch as well. We have to get these PRN staff addressed, and we have to make these policy changes. I think it's probably closer to, next June, July, before we can really get this on a consistent basis. You agree, Tim, or is that too aggressive?
Like I said, with the, and I think I may be once confused, but like I said, this is a model, this is the performance goals, we look at the new model, and we're looking at the model taking effect. It's gonna take me somewhere around 15 months to get this model up and going, to build this model, hiring trucks, equipment, and everything. So this is what I'm providing you, this is what's gonna take place. Can we start reporting on this up until the 15 months? Yes. But I'm not saying,
What I'm hearing from Mike is you're saying May, June timeframe, we should be able to meet that 11-9.
Well, that was what I was asking.
Yes.
I think Tim's saying, I think what we're all saying is, Tim's saying it's gonna take 15 months. I think the committee's saying, can we do better than that? And you're the operator.
Mhm.
You know better than anyone whether we can do that. Can we, with the policy changes, can we hire the PRN? Can we get fully staffed?
We can be fully staffed, we're gonna be fully staffed hopefully by the first of the year.
For the current model.
For the current model. Now that, mind you now, that is in case when we totally flip trucks. We've got paramedics that have been there for, quite, as long as I have. Some may be retiring. What I'm looking at is everybody rotates from the 24-hour trucks to the 12-hour trucks and nobody leaves. If somebody leaves, we're gonna be understaffed again. We're gonna, if I predict there's 4 people gonna leave because we go to 12 hours, then I'm level 4 again. So I've got to recruit again.
Right.
Let me see if I get this straight. I'm slow sometimes. What I'm hearing is that the staffing that you got 8 people coming on right now.
Correct.
That doesn't, there's monies in the budget right now for those 8 people, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that's gonna get you up to this model right here.
11 and 9.
Right, okay. And then 2 more ambulances will come on and there'll be more staffing.
In 15 months.
In 15 months.
During the 15-month period.
Yeah, we go.
And then that number will hopefully change.
Yes.
After the 15
Yes.
months.
I think,
I'm not trying to argue, you guys want me to give you a number, and I just give you a number.
We need to understand capabilities.
Yes.
One thing I'd like to add, clear, you said that 11 and 9 does not include the QRVs.
No.
Does that include replacing Lanes Creek and New Salem with a ALS
Correct.
box? Is that included in that number?
If we rotate this, the new model consists of having 14 transport trucks, and that would be doing away with the
QRVs.
The QRVs.
Okay, all right.
And so you see what I'm saying? I'm losing what we do now with the QRVs is we utilize those as backfill. When we go to this new model, we can't utilize those as backfill anymore.
Well, I would ask that.
And so that's where I'm at.
I would ask if you're going to report your staffing, you should need to report it on all vehicles, even the QRVs.
Okay.
I mean, this is 11 and 9 ALS units. We got 2 QRVs that are probably going to be there close to the end of the 15 months, ballpark, sometime in that time frame, when the trucks come in and you have staffing.
QRVs in service.
But we need to.
We'll be replacing.
As soon as he gets fully staffed and goes to full 12-hour trucks, the QRVs are going out of service. Is that not right?
The QRVs will go out of service when we start this model.
But
In
those-
15 months.
Yes.
So they'll stay in place until we get the new vehicles. And if it's 12 months and you get them and you got staffing,
We'll flip them then.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. Okay, now I understand.
Okay, so can I propose something then? Okay, here's what I would suggest. Then, by March 1st or sometime we determine as something that's doable, because I think I'd like to push it a little bit faster than the May, June timeframe. that we have the 11 and 9 standard is the standard. 11 and 9, 90% of the time, will be the standard at that point. Then through the budget process, which will be going on at that same time period, we'll establish what the next 12-month standard will be. If that's 14 with no QRBs or whatever that is through the budget process, that gets established. Because I think we're talking past new model, the existing standard. You have to address, I think you have to put in the tier 1, kind of the immediate future standard. And then beyond that is going to have to be established through the budget process as it's meant to be, because you're out of cycle right now. But I think we need to push to get to the 11 and 9, 90% standard as fast as we can. Does that make, am I making sense to folks?
I agree, but I still think it should be higher than 90% if that's what we're already providing.
But that's not what you're already providing. You're at 9 and 7.
We're at 9 and 7.
If you're
Well,
at
in
9 and 7,
reality,
minimum.
but 9 and 7 never shows up. It's always stated it's 11 and 9.
Yeah.
well,
And if that's the
inaccurate.
response model, then I don't really know how you drop back to a lower number of units. In other words, if you have that stated model and you have money for part-time people and money for full-time people and overtime money, how do you fall below that?
But how do you fall below the 11 and 9, which is our maximum trucks we have on the road standing? That's our maximum staffing. And so when you look at minimum staffing, our minimum staffing is usually somewhere around 10 or 9 during the day and about 7 at night. The reason why is that we have to have somebody on the trucks. I understand what you're saying, but we don't have callbacks. We don't have callbacks. All we do is we page out for openings. We have a sick out, we have 2 sick outs, 3 sick outs. We have to page that out. We don't have mandatory callback. We don't have mandatory return to shift. We don't have that. Is that some possibilities in the future? Yes. But this was the issue that I was trying to avoid, providing these numbers to you about these units availability. I think what we should do is we agree that I'm going to give you a response time throughout the county, and then I'm going to make sure it happens. And how to make sure it happens is to have the most trucks on the road as possible every day. That's how we going to achieve that. But I understand what you're trying to do. You know, what we're trying to do here is to make sure that we've got that. I can't assure that in our current model, the current way we operate, I can't, that's what we run about anywhere from 8 to, like I said, 9, 8 during the day, 7 at night.
11 and 9 is your best day.
That is maximum.
So
that's what we got right now. It's maximum.
That's not really normal.
Right.
So
I mean, it really is a stretch. I think
Yeah.
that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
It's a stretch, and then the fact that we're turning 2 QRBs, and I mean, this is short-term a stretch goal. We're not going to hit this goal short-term. And, I think we can put it in, but I just want to set clear expectations. When we start doing monthly reports, we will not be hitting this goal January, February. Our goal is to ramp up, add the new trucks, add the staff. And I think, this is a goal that, I hope we can start hitting, in that May, June timeframe, if Tim agrees to that, and then we can reassess when we, set the goals for next year. But, we got an awful lot of work to do between now and, probably closer to 9 months. We have a lot of work to do. We also, we got to hire a director. There's a lot of things to do. So I just want to set clear expectations because I don't want anybody to think we're going to probably be hitting this goal come January.
I would say, just thinking from a recruitment standpoint, March 1st is not realistic.
Okay.
When you consider the fact that Thanksgiving is in 3 weeks, Christmas is a few weeks after that, not a lot of people are out job searching around Christmas time. that's just the nature of recruiting. It will pose a challenge to get people in here today.
But I believe, Mike, you mentioned you think June, correct?
If Tim's the operator. I think 15 months, honestly, is too, we got to push that.
Yeah.
I think 15 months is too long. June's almost 9 months. Is that something that we can have at least the infrastructure of this new proposed model in place?
In 9 months, that's gonna be a big push. What we've been looking at and what we have discussed in the model that I showed was about 15 months to give me enough time to get this up and running. Now what I'm understanding is that we're moving that back down to 9 months, 12 months.
I guess the big question is, effective July 1st, do you feel comfortable you could hit this goal?
11 and 9.
11 and 9 at 90%.
Well,
That's
yes.
Help me again to understand.
That's the question.
We're talking about end of July, and this man says he's gonna have them fully staffing at the end of this year. Now, how long will it take to train the people to make it 11 and 9?
But we have to understand, even at the first of the year, when I'm fully staffed, that doesn't mean that I'm gonna have the ability to man these trucks
I
11
understand.
and 9 100% of the time.
I'm just asking, how long is it gonna take, if you get every one of these 8 people hired for December 31st, how long is it gonna take you from January 1 to what, to meet that 11 and 9?
I can't give you an accurate date right now. I mean,
I'm talking a ball game. I mean, what would be your assessment if you had to answer to and say, this is my estimate of what it would take?
next July, 6 months.
6 months after January 1st to train them.
To get everything up and.
When you say get everything up, what are you,
We got,
other than the training?
I think a lot of times what the issue is here is that we're gonna have to do some policy changes. We're gonna have to do some re-education of the employees. It's not just because it's not just bringing somebody in off the street
Okay.
and putting them to work. You can't do that. But and through the policy changes, we've got to have some policy changes also that will make this work. What I'm saying now is the current time, I cannot guarantee you that we're gonna be 100% 11-9 next March,
Quicker than
July, or whatever, until we get all this other stuff completed. I can't guarantee you that.
We're gonna measure your progress.
You can measure it,
Yeah.
yes, but that's what I'm saying is,
Okay.
If this is not a breachable goal, and you said if you feel comfortable come July 1st, we could do this 11 and 9, 90% of the time, is that what we want to put in with the understanding, we're probably, for the next, until July 1st, we're probably not going to hit it?
Well, that's part of that. If you look at it, that's actually part of the process of getting to the 15 months, because even fixing where we are today is part of that process.
correct.
And so let's lay out kind of a timeline, and if it is July 1st that you have, fully staffed, and then we look at, that's 9 months, so that gives you 6 months, you're gonna phase in the new portion. I assume you're gonna be working toward the new, even though it's between now and July.
No, that's giving him 9 months to phase in to meet this.
Oh, I understand it, but what I'm saying is that during that 9 months also, you'll be building up staff to be able to add that additional, so you can add additional unit with that spare we talked about.
Yeah,
Then you gotta order the other 2 trucks, and he's talking about hitting that in 15 months. Is that right?
What I'm gonna do is when this thing is signed and everybody's happy, I will start to work then, that day, that next day, we will start working. What I'm asking for is 15 months to have it up and operational. During that time, we may reach goals. We could be at 9 months, 6 months, depends on hiring, depends on policy changes, all of that. But that's, I'm gonna start working just as soon as this agreement, and I know now I got a direction, this is what we gotta do. We're gonna start working right there.
I think we should give him, he feels like he can do it by June 30th. Mike mentioned June 30th. I think that's when we ought to, or put that in there to meet this goal here, and at the same time, he'd be working on the 2 additionals, and that carry over into that 15, 18-month period, but I think they can do it. I think they can do it in 9 months. I believe that he can.
We're gonna be in budget, I would think we're gonna be in budget negotiations in June. So this.
Right before that, March.
Well,
Yeah.
March, well, so we'll be looking
If
at
we're
it.
talking about June, it's too late.
Okay, we'll be looking at it.
But you look at the progress y'all have made so far. I'm optimistic, maybe I'm just an optimist,
Okay.
that come budget time, we may not need as many as we're projecting because of meeting the response times. So as long as you do that, work toward those goals. Mr. Chair, can we take a?
No, I was gonna suggest that we get a fire extinguisher for Tim's seat.
So I knew this was gonna happen.
Let me say this. I don't envy him being where he's at this morning. And I appreciate them. I know personnel. If you had the A1 personnel and everything, you could do it in less than that. But you're not gonna get there because it's always bad apples.
Right.
But, I appreciate what you bring to us and tell us. But I think you gotta have goals set to achieve. And whether you achieve them or not, at least you try to do that. But if you don't have that goal, you're not gonna get there. You're gonna be mediocre. I'm not saying all employees are, but we're not being arrogant, or I'm not being arrogant in asking you these questions, because I want to know, because I don't understand some things because I'm not in your business.
Correct.
If I told you what I did, you wouldn't understand what I did. So he's at a disadvantage in some ways there. But I do think when he tells that he can do it in a certain time, put him to that time. And then if he doesn't do it, say, what went wrong? And we want to speed up that time. I realize that. I do think that when you got 11 and 9 model, and this is what we're based on, and then we're going to get 2 more, I do know that, like he's talking about the sickness, that plays a tremendous part in his operations. But when you increase personnel and you increase units, you got to increase response. You're going to decrease response time because people's going to make a difference. So, and it's whether or not Jeff's going to buy it. If Jeff can buy it and we do that, and boom, we got something going. But we'll just have to see how it plays out. But I do appreciate what you bring to us and tell us, and it's no way sarcastic. Please.
And I think Tim has obviously the best knowledge of anyone. I mean, we can all say, boy, that seems a little long. That's why I keep going back to Tim. I think we all want to push because we're all excited because we want to best serve Union County residents, and nobody wants to do that more than Union EMS. But Tim really has the best perspective, much better than any of us. So we appreciate you, Tim, and keeping us straight.
And on that, thank you, Mike and Butch, and on that note, why don't we take a 10-15 minute break?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Restrooms and phone calls and the business of life. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in session. Might note for the record that Mr. Lutz has left due to another business commitment. So that puts us back, our regular committee members back down to 9. The other two we have present, Mr. Blythe and Mr. Brinker, at this point in time.
Actually, Mr. Blythe will make the 9th.
We'll make the 9th.
Yeah.
So
Just Mr. Brinker that's muffled.
okay, back to our discussion on the performance goals. And again, back to the unit availability. When we last left, we were at the point that I think the discrepancy or the point of contention in the group was the date at which we could reasonably expect this 11-9 number to be in effect. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. And
at this point in time, you know, I'll just reopen the conversation based on that. Mr. Yates, you had indicated that you would like to see something that would fall in line with the budget cycle, us to evaluate it with the budget cycle. Tim, I think you had some, you know, your concerns were with the spin-up time associated to achieve it. You know, and I'll just reopen the discussion at this point in time with that. So what's the pleasure of the group?
One question, Jeff, is you said March 1st, that's optimum. What is?
That March timeframe, that's when we're meeting with all the VFDs and finalizing a lot of the external budget, because we have to balance it realistically around the 1st of April. So getting all the needs in first by the 1st of March is really our goal, and then we spend March debating it and honing it in and working it with all the players involved, recognizing we have to meet with the 18 VFDs and other external folks, and then in this case, EMS will start into more of a process of actually evaluating their components versus them making a request, and that's kind of just trying to work within a dollar amount. So, because you're adding layers of benchmarks and those kinds of things we have to work through. So yeah, that March timeframe is really optimal. You know, by March 1st to have something in hand to start talking about.
What's worst case?
April.
Okay.
April 1st.
But to get to this 11-9 model, Jeff, finances are already there for that, is that correct?
That's what I'm hearing is we've funded sufficient to go to the full 12-hour versus the 24-hour deployment in the last budget cycle. We funded a certain number of replacement units. There's also an expectation that they're going to use some fund balance to make some computer and some equipment replacement. So I think that if we were to write this benchmark, that getting it in place before the next budget cycle is appropriate, and then during the budget discussion, we can decide what the next level of ramp up is and what we can afford. You follow me? So if we're trying to get to 14, during that budget cycle, we can decide, is it going to go all the way to 14, is it going to be 13? And then getting the final pricing to go there during the starting July 1 into the next year, determining what that next level benchmark is. But I would suggest, just like I talked about, I think we need to get that 11-9 as fast as possible. And it should be before the start of the next fiscal year.
Which would be July 1.
Which will be July 1. I don't see that as a 2016 or a 2016 goal. I see that as a 2015 benchmark. So
we'll strive to work with it. You know, I'll stay abreast with Curtis on our progress.
yeah.
Well, one thing we talked about was quarterly reports back to the commission. And what I'd like to see is some, like we talked about having staffing in end of December, maybe in January, can present where we are. And then we'll look out, you know, you said it takes 90 to 120 days. Look out, you know, April time frame, what to be able to provide a better estimate. Is that reasonable?
Okay.
And
Okay. All right.
Ty, is that for the wrap up, or is that for 14 units that you just, April?
now April is making sure we're achieving
11,
11 and 9.
Okay, and then we'll figure out what they need.
And then what we do is we look at, you know,
Okay.
we start looking at when we're gonna apply the additional vehicles that we may need.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask one other question? Sure. With this 11 and 9, I'd assume we talked about adding or making some changes with where you put the vehicles.
Correct.
I assume those changes will be staggered out to when you have the resources. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, one thing that I wanted to make clear, Don asked a question there. The 11 and 9 will become the minimum when we get to the 14 and 11.
Correct.
Does everybody understand that?
Oh.
You know, so-
No, I don't.
No, I think
that's not
that's
true.
going to be the standard by July 1.
Right, but that's, what he's presenting, Tim, is that 11 and 9 will be the minimum in 16 when we're fully, in the 15 months, when he's fully staffed up to 14 during the day and 11 at night, he's saying 11 and 9 will be his minimum.
No,
Well, I think that's
it'll actually
what
go.
we talked about.
It'll go up to 12.
That's-
If you're looking at 90%, if there's 2 vehicles down, that number should come up.
Right.
If you're operating off of 90%.
This is like when we do the model day 1,
Mhm.
we wanted figures. This 11 and 9 is, and that's, I think, where we got confusing. If we're 15 months into it and we're all meeting here and we're going live Monday, this would be my minimum staffing. Not maximum would be 14 and 11. Minimum staffing would be 11 and 9. That's what this is all about. This is nothing present, you know. And I understand what you're saying now. This day and time right now, where we're at right now, throw the model out the window. We're discussing EMS services today. Our maximum staffing for transport trucks is 11 on day and 9. Our minimum staffing is somewhere around 8 during the day, or 9 during the day and 7 at night. You see what I'm saying?
That doesn't fall in with the 90%.
No.
But I thought we were gonna target 90%. And if we go to 14, your 90% is gonna have you at 12
Okay.
during the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And that's giving you, that actually, that's saying, we talked about the 2 vehicles, you said it was 1.4 vehicles? 90%?
1.4, yeah, somewhere about 2 vehicles.
86, 87%, something like that. So,
This is just a starting point, you know, at day 1 that that model takes place.
well,
And that's
but your 11.9 is what your current staffing's at.
maximum staffing
The
now.
the 90 percentile should apply that as well.
Okay. And like I said, this is the numbers I give you for the minimum staffing when that model takes place, is the 11 and 9. During the next 15 months or year, and when we ramp up, and if we're up and running, we can come back at budget negotiations and say, yeah, you're correct, we're gonna go to 90, or we're gonna go to 12 and 10
Okay.
is our minimum.
And we can do that during the budget process.
Right,
because
that's what we're talking about here.
I think we're saying it 2 different ways, but we're trying to go the same thing.
I
Okay, good.
I just
But-
want to
but-
clarify that. I want
yeah,
everybody to
but you
understand
guys-
what that was.
The committee wanted me to come back with some type of number.
I know.
And so this is, you know, and what I'm looking at with these performance goals is this is what we're gonna do when we cut the switch up. Boom, here's our goals. And this is the unit availability, and I'm sorry, I should have put minimum there. And that would be minimum to start with, but we could probably, that's a goal that I'm sure that we can reach, and we'll probably, you know, do better.
So just to restate, make sure.
I'm
Several different iterations of
I'm
this.
sorry for the confusion.
What we're stating as the performance goal on number 6 is minimum unit availability.
Correct.
11 days, 9 at nights, at 90% of the time by July 1. Is that accurate?
If that's around, yeah, when the model gets up and rolling. If the model gets up and rolling by July 1, yes.
Minimum unit availability.
That's the
11
standard.
11
Yeah.
during daytime, 9 at nights, at 90% of the time.
It can't be if,
It has to be.
it has to be.
Yeah, it has to
By
be.
July
It's
1.
kind of like your fire trucks. You can't have 5 fire trucks, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why it's been such a sore issue with me to even discuss this, because there's so many pieces of that puzzle
Yeah.
for this to happen. And I have to be able to control all those pieces to get it to happen. And that's what's gonna take,
You can do it.
And if I may,
Yes.
Mr. Blount and I had a sidebar discussion, just to clarify, I guess, my ignorance. You know, when we started this endeavor, the goal was to move to one number response time for the whole county. In order for him to meet that, he's gonna need to run the most trucks he can. So I guess that's what I need to understand for this group is, what is truly the goal here? Is it to better the response time to serve the whole county?
Yes.
Or to increase the number of trucks?
Yes.
Response time is better.
yes.
That's how I understand it right now, yes.
Yeah, but you're right.
So, I mean, he's gonna have to run as many trucks as he can in order to meet that.
The standard is 1429. The
So
goal
aren't
is
we
as
really
much- as many trucks as possible.
Splitting hairs, I guess?
But I'm gonna,
Just asking. I mean, in the end, aren't we really just kind of?
and I understand what they're asking, is
Sure.
that, you know, it's total, what we're looking for is response times, to make sure we meet that benchmark in response times of this. But also, they wanna make sure that we have a sufficient amount of coverage of the county at all times.
Sure.
You know,
90%.
it may come down, you know, I
And if
don't-
you don't
I
have
don't
those
ever-
trucks running 90% of the time, all over the
Right.
county, you're not gonna beat that one
Yeah.
number for the.
I think a simple way to explain availability is we're asking him not to staff for what he does, but for what he may have to do.
yeah.
If we have a problem at DSS and we have to transport 15 people,
Sure.
we need to have the capabilities to do that.
Right.
And if he's meeting response times and he doesn't have the available trucks to do that and continue to service the rest of the county on his routine, then we're in trouble. And so we're talking about unit availability for what may happen, not what does happen.
And I understand that, but it's been hard for me to give you that
Well, it's,
number, so I provided you the maximum, our maximum staffing level will be our minimum when the model takes place. And that's where I just started
You've
at.
got to ramp, you know, everybody agrees that this can't happen. It'd be nice to be able to like turn that switch on over there and all of a sudden it's there. And we realize, that's why we're talking about going out into the July timeframe to meet some things. We've got to address some, please don't take this wrong, some sins of the past to get to where we can really go forward. But we're trying to give you the tools to go forward and improve it. And, you know, 15 months sounds like a long time. I'd like to see it in 6 months, but it just ain't gonna happen that way. So we need to set our target goals, and that's probably something we need to talk about, Johnny, in the major committee. But we really clearly, and that's why I push you for a date when your hire is gonna be, we've gotta have specific goals and dates to achieve it. Jeff has been very clear about what he needs and when we can go, because it really gets into the cost. And you know, it's we've got to maintain absolute best possible service at what the county can afford.
I think at this point in time, we've touched on all of the, we've hit 2 of our 3 objectives for this meeting.
Who's the third?
Yeah, 2 for 3 at this point in time. At this point in time, though, with regard to the performance goals as we have them listed here, you know, just to summarize, make sure we're all on the same page. Everyone is good with the shoot time as described here on Tim's document
For year one.
for year 1. Everyone's good with the criteria on his attachment for paramedic skill retention.
Do we need to vote on these?
That's where I'm
Okay.
headed with this.
Okay.
Would you prefer to approve each one individually, or you want to approve them
I'll take
in mass? That's
Probably
fine.
close. Just going through.
Customer patient satisfaction rate, 95% favorable with an emphasis on annual improvement.
Correct.
Okay, is that fair enough categorization for everybody? We've decided to make number 4 a reporting criteria for staff
Outside the goals.
outside the goal.
Yeah.
Everybody's good with the hospital turnaround times, that's 30 minutes, 90% of hospital transports?
Is there anybody that isn't?
Yeah.
Please speak up.
Yes. And then finally, the fifth criteria, or the fifth goal, minimum unit availability of 11 during the day and 9 at night by July 1st.
At 90%.
At 90%, I'm sorry. That's-
I do have a question on number 5, so sorry. The 30 minutes, 90% of the time for hospital transports, how is that measured?
That's, I'm sorry, total transports. That's measured by, when they're out at the hospital, and it's just like
It's 30 minutes at the hospital.
yes, sir. That's what that is. And we already measured that. And,
Right.
And we're better than ourselves, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's what that is.
Where are you now on
25 to 30 fluctuates.
Does it go over 30?
Sometimes it does.
But your average is 25 to
Well,
30.
90% of the time, we do everything on 9 percentiles. And we're right at the 29-30% right now. And we're sort of stable like that. That's what we're sort of saying. You have to get, what we try to do is we try to get that, get the patient offloaded, reports, PCR completed enough as possible, because we have to leave a portion of that PCR care report with the hospital. And also, it gives time for cleaning of the truck, and also it gives them a little break instead of, flipping so. We've got additional goals that we wanna go down to, but right now, if we can, we'll meet that. I'm confident we'll meet that, and then probably the next year it's gonna be lower, because we're gonna improve. We're gonna do better.
I would hope if you're 29 now that you could improve, or, that-
We are. But when you get into that part of it, it's sort of like too with shoot times, we talked about shoot times maybe down to the 60-second mark. It comes to a bottoming point that's all you can do. And we haven't reached that yet with the hospital turnaround. We haven't reached that yet, but that's a good
probably the
start.
one you got the least control of.
Mhm.
At least you might keep you over there.
Just won't take them.
Well,
I can
along with
tell
the
you,
hospital.
everyone that falls out, if it's on us, Tim calls us, to read about it, so it's not for Brandon, and when Scott was here, it was the same thing, we actually meet monthly.
Okay.
And, talk through any opportunities, concerns, issues, because
We do that.
if we hold them up, they may hold us up,
Yeah,
it's a
that's true.
partnership thing, so.
Okay. Chief, any other questions regarding that?
No, that was it. I just wondered how that was being measured, what we were looking at,
Yes,
if
sir.
it was there out at the hospital time.
Out at hospital, and then we even have a alert built in at CCOM.
Right.
30 minutes, they're calling
Yeah.
Unit 10-8, and usually you can, if you listen to radio traffic a lot of times, if they're close or whatever, the supervisor's going, you can go ahead and show them 10-8, and they put them back. If it's an issue with the hospital about finding a bed or whatever, of course they usually tell CCOM that we're still tied up, bed availability or something like that, and that's when we start our monthly meetings over here. I got to get these trucks back around, And especially now with an agreement such as this.
Right, yeah, gives you another tool.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if we're good with the performance standard of 1429, we're good with our 5 performance goals, I'll entertain a motion.
I have, I'd like to make a request that we vote on each one individually.
Okay. Any discussion on his request?
You talking about on
Any,
the
any,
goals?
any opposition,
Individual 1 through 6.
Okay.
any opposition to voting on them individually? If not, it'll entertain a motion to accept on the performance goals, number 1 as shoot time, dispatch en route.
If I may, I'm sorry, just
Yes,
to
ma'am.
clarify before we do vote, what we are voting to do is make a recommendation, correct?
Yeah, everything we're doing here is a
Yes,
recommendation to
this
the
is,
full.
this is
Okay.
what we're submitting as our deliverable to the main committee, our proposed metrics. Number 1, shoot time, 90 seconds, 90% of all emergency calls
For the first year.
That's first year.
First year.
for the first year.
I would think all this would be for the first year.
Yeah, the expectation.
Yeah, all this is first year. So all this is first year.
I'll make a motion to accept it.
That's fine.
Okay, motion by Don to accept, second by Richard. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Okay. Number 2, paramedic skill retention. If you refer to your document, listing in skill levels in year 1, year 2, year 3 is provided by Mr. Adams. And I would assume those would be made part of the overall
Recommendation to the
recommendation
committee.
of the goal.
I believe, Tim, you said that this exceeds the national average, is that correct?
Correct.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion to accept these as the recommended criteria. Second.
I second.
Curtis. He's taking the minutes, however, whoever he wants. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Third performance goal, customer service, patient satisfaction. We have on the table a 95% recommended, or 95% favorable rate with emphasis on annual improvement.
Make a motion to be accepted.
Motion to accept that. Second.
I'll second.
Second, Alicia, thank you very much. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Hospital turnaround times. And that's defined as the unit available time minus the facility arrival time. 30 minutes, 90% for 90% of hospital transports.
I'll make the motion.
Motion to accept by Curtis. Second by Don. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Minimum unit availability, 11 a day, 9 at night. This is at 90% of the time by July 1st of 2015. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion on the floor, Richard, second.
I'll second.
Second by Alicia. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay. So we split 2, got the dissension vote. Okay. Covers all 5?
So that-
We still, we were going to revisit.
All passed.
I have 2 cut off.
Sir?
I said they all passed.
Yeah, pass.
I'd like to ask a question. Curtis, would you tell us, I think I know, but would you explain your, or could you, or would you explain your
Objection.
objection on, I'll be glad to explain mine,
On which one?
the one you objected to.
Which one?
Well, I didn't hear you vote yes, but two.
The shoot
I
time.
voted against it. I voted against shoot time. Going back to my fundamental belief that 90 seconds is too long, to me, it's unacceptable. And on unit availability, I think 90% is too low for something we're already saying that we're doing. It's pretty simple.
Well, I'll give you my reason for objecting to the, I got it number 5, it was number 6, I made it number 5 on my list because we rubbed out one. But I just feel like we're too long to get that staffing and to get to that 11 and 9. That's just my personal opinion. I think if you got the units already and you just need the staffing, that it can be done less than 9 months. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay,
I don't have a bit of problem with it, but that's just my opinion.
appreciate it.
And I do kind of agree a little bit with Curtis. What I would like to have seen done would be to put in the second year and third year into that goal, in that 90 seconds.
With a decrease down to.
Exactly.
But
And what it is, I'm not saying that, but I think you need to, if you're gonna hold it for 90, then the second year, it ought to go down, the third year, it ought to go down too, if it can be done. And evidently, it can be done elsewhere. So I'm not saying that we can do it, but I think you need to set that as a goal. You gotta set it if you're able to achieve
And
it.
I think that's a function of two different things at that point. It's a function of finance and ability to pay, and then making that change in how they do their staffing. So I agree with you. I think it's a multi-year goal, and I think that we'll readdress this here in 6 months during the budget process, and we'll look to improve on that, but there's also going to be a price tag attached to that. So
Well-
we'll be buying down service at that point to be able to improve it.
I think though, Jeff,
Time's not a budget.
Well, not turnaround time.
yeah,
Turnaround.
the response time there on the 90-second has nothing to do with finance.
Right.
Well, I was referring, I'm sorry, I was
Yeah, he's
referring
talking
back to
about-
the
Yeah,
other.
okay.
And I think I would just say, relative to the shoot times, Curtis, I agree, 90 seconds is too long, but what I would pose is, this first year is going to be a whole, you're gonna have to build, you're gonna have to hire, you're gonna have to buy, you're gonna have to change policies, you're completely changing
System.
an
It's a
organization.
systemic change, yeah.
So to know
Quantum change.
what really, I don't see year 1 as being the big year. It'll be the big build up, but year 2 and year 3, that's the year you're gonna really see what you're capable of. I mean, I don't think you're gonna know it in year 1. I think year 2 and 3 is where Tim's really gonna have to prove the system and see what value we can provide, out of the investment that's been made, which is what Jeff's gonna wanna see is, what value are we getting for our investment? I don't think you're gonna know that in year 1. It's probably gonna be more year 2.
Right. And from my perspective, mine's a little different. I've worked in organizations that have went through change and culture change.
Sure,
We were never given any time to make sure that we would improve our times.
sure.
We were told every time, effective X date, you would meet the standard.
Mhm.
So that's the background I come from.
Again, I think that's the difference in public safety and healthcare. I mean, I think it's, we look at things differently. And with the hospital running EMS, they look at it from a healthcare standpoint. We're looking at it from a public safety standpoint. It makes, there's just a little difference in opinion on those things.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, Tim is gonna push that team to do much better than 90.
Well, what we want
That's
is,
the right
I
thing
mean,
to
that's,
do.
yeah, that's what we want. We want Tim to have to push them.
Right.
We want Tim to push them, and we want to set goals where he has to push them to meet them. If we're not doing that, then we're not doing what we ought to be doing.
My concerns, like I said, when I post these things is something, a standard that we can work with, that we're familiar with doing right now. not only is it with the EMS that we're gonna have a culture change, we know, I think all of us understand there's so many different things that's has to occur to get this model up and running. Not only this, but, I think we'll speak a little bit more on technology and the data. We gotta make, we've worked for over a month or so to make sure even our data matches. Well, when we talk about shoot times and response times, that's data. So we gotta make sure that's accurate on both sides. And we gotta make sure that we've got an accurate, the CAD information and all, the relay information, how we push the buttons and all, has got to be accurate for us to start to be held in these goals. So that's my concern, and that's why I say 90 seconds, 90% of the time. We get all this stuff worked out and we've got everything's working correctly. I don't, 3 years from now, I don't see a problem with it.
We can make it 45 in 3 years.
And we will lead, and we will be a leader.
You gotta be careful.
All right. Mr. Chairman, at this point in time, we have accomplished our assigned mandate, our original mandate of compiling performance metrics and a performance standard for this group. Now, at the last meeting, we were assigned the additional task of proposing the model. I think we were prepared to do that based on the hybrid between what Curtis had originally proposed and what Tim spent a lot of time, and essentially, like he said, they were that, so I think we're at this point in time with regard to a proposed deployment model. There are some issues with regard to that in my mind are still unresolved. And I wanted to touch base with the group that before we proceeded any further with that. I never heard back. Have either of you heard back with results from the poll, Curtis? Perhaps that we did an informal poll with the fire chiefs to determine their.
I wanted to ask that.
Yeah, their willingness to accommodate
I have not.
a deployment model like that.
I believe Rob was gonna get that information for me.
Yeah. I think
I haven't heard of it.
Chief Fitzgerald, that, because, again, that's going to be essential to the success of the program, is
Correct.
whether or not we're going to be able to put these trucks in those houses, or at least give these trucks access to those houses to begin with.
I can tell you that I have not heard what the response was. I did see the email go out to the group. I haven't heard the response. But I will also tell you that we have a meeting next week of all the county fire chiefs, and that'll be a topic of discussion. Rob had asked me to put that in there as a discussion item, so that'll be a topic of discussion.
What date do you meet, John?
Thursday, I'm pretty sure. Butch, we're meeting on Thursday this week because we have the state association coming in. They're giving an award to Senator Tommy Tucker, and that'll be done at our meeting. So we're trying to coordinate. We normally meet on Tuesdays, but it's election day, and it'd be kind of hard to get him there to give him an award on election day.
Just nobody running again.
Yeah, but so we're trying to coordinate that with him and make sure that he can be available and the state members can be available. So right now it's Thursday. Thursday night we'll be doing that, and so by next Friday, our meeting, I will have firsthand experience with that in the conversation.
Okay.
And I know that there's been some conversation back and forth over the last 2 years in regards to the bases that are currently in fire station and the revenue from that, and we still got to work through all that.
And just that, in order to kind of help facilitate things in that discussion, some of the preliminary comments that had come back that the Chief Fitzgerald shared with some of us was, little concerns about, just
I read those.
just things like, making sure that if you bring a drink bottle in there, throw the drink bottle in the trash and,
Well-
you know, little housekeeping things. And your folks have no objection, or there's no problem with assuring that.
Let me interject something, and I think that the majority of what I read on the list that came back out of that email, some of the concerns that were shared on the email, I don't know where they came from, but, you know, there are management problems if you can't deal with that in your fire station. You got some other issues. And the second side of that is, and, you know, my opinion on it is if you're not willing to allow an ambulance to stage at your fire station and provide them shore power, then you kind of lost sight of the reason why you're there. You know, so that's a conversation that I intend to have with the Fire Chiefs Association on Thursday night.
Okay.
So that's, you know, I think it's doable, you know, from a management standpoint. So there's been that age-old, you know, back and forth about who's gonna clean up what, but that's a pretty simple fix.
Well, and, you know, and truthfully, you know, as with my fire service experience too, is, and having been through the years, typically a change like this is more well received when we ask to come in as opposed to telling people we're coming.
Or showing up.
It's showing up, you know, unannounced, so.
Yeah, the showing up part usually don't work.
Exactly.
Can I just ask a quick procedural question, this may be more for Johnny, is the intent on the deployment model, how does that work into the agreement? I mean, because we have the performance benchmarks and standards, there's a place for that. Is this gonna be a suggested or recommended or expected deployment version? I mean, because we have, how are you going to measure that as a benchmark, or how does that fit into the proposal at this point? I guess is my question.
Well, the deployment model will be what Tim needs to meet these performance goals or these metrics, and I think that's what the conversation about 11 and 9 was.
Okay.
So the deployment model will be what him and his team perceives that they need to meet the response times to one zone over the whole county. So it'll come out in the form of I mean, it'll be, you know, if we're accepting these performance goals in a contractual basis of, you know, whatever that response time is and whatever those.
Then he'll have the flexibility then to determine his deployment to
Yeah, I don't
achieve
think-
that.
Yeah.
Is that kind of- is that what I'm hearing?
I think really one of the things too, if I can interject, especially with the fire department model of deployment areas, is that we were taking into consideration, that was some of the concerns about crew comfort, crew areas, and that's what we're really looking at with, to me, is utilizing the fire stations more, is that we can provide places for
Because I want to,
restrooms and
a little
different
different way to
things.
look at it is, all the 18 VFDs are independent groups. How EMS interacts with the 18 VFDs is largely a matter between the VFD and EMS, not necessarily a contractual matter between the county
Right,
and EMS.
and we're not doing that. We're setting the county up as this one zone for one response time 90% of the time over that entire county. And Tim said, I got to have 14 trucks during the day and 11 at night. And here are the measures that we want to measure, and this is the goals that we want to achieve out of that deployment model. How he works those 14 trucks and 11, if, you know, where he puts them, I mean, he's showing a map, and I think the last Friday meeting, there was a map shown that kind of depicted locations where he thought they would have to be. And a lot of those were at fire stations, but it has nothing to do contractually with the county if you know, the deployment model will be massaged and worked however Tim needs to work it to meet these goals.
And that's what I want to understand, because we'll have to go about at some point papering this between the county and EMS by the November 17th meeting. So if I'm understanding, what you're saying is if he decides he needs to put one in Henry Bridge at your fire station to make his response times, then he'll work that out with you at that individual station. I just want to be clear and for everybody at home, everybody understand that's how this is going to go.
And I think that was the letter or the email sent
Right,
out
that
to
was
all
the
the
reason.
chiefs, if they were comfortable with that.
And he just, what the email was, he just sent out an email, blanket email to all the chiefs that said, would you be okay basically with an EMS truck standing by? Would you provide them a place to sit down, a restroom to use, and a microwave, for heating their meals? I think that was just, and I think it had a shoreline power in there or whatnot, so, you know, I think that was just a blanket email to say, all of the VFDs are on board with doing that now. You know, Tim wants to come to Henry Bridge, and he'll pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, you know, to meet this model here, or whatever, we need to put an ambulance at your station. When can we sit down and talk about that? And then it would be at that point that I would need to work out with Tim, okay, if your folks are here, this is what we expect, this is kind of how we operate, you know, and he understands that, and we work that out. It has nothing to do contractually with the county or through the contract. If they're not sitting at Henry Bridges Fire Station and he needs to have an ambulance there to meet his deployment model, then they may be sitting at the gas station on the corner. We're trying to work this out so that the posted locations are A, provide crew safety, and B, crew comfort, and the ability for EMS to meet their response times and their goals that we're setting out in here. And I think that's the gist of all that, right, Tim?
Correct.
Right, absolutely. There was never any intent to impose it on the individual fire departments.
And nobody's, yeah, and I think that's.
I think the main goal is get response time to all the county. That was our main goal.
Right.
That's what we're hearing from the county.
And I think the fire departments are stepping up to help us with,
Sure.
do that. And it's also going to be a more cost effective, because some of the stations that we're leasing right now, we may not need. And it may not be during the first year, because we've got to transition.
See, when you start talking about cost effective, you have to look at it from cost effective to whom.
That's it.
Okay?
That's why I'm saying they're stepping up.
It's a trade-off.
So, you know, it's really not cost effective to the VFDs that are renting space to EMS, because they're gonna lose $10,600 a year out of their budget. And that's got to be the conversation that's taken place a couple of times over the last years, that the finance department and the county has to understand why you're not contractually bound to allow EMS to stay at the fire station, but we got to make up that revenue somehow.
The fire department.
It's different forms. Sometimes that's general fund.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's
Because-
fire fee, sometimes that's fire tax.
Depends upon the station. or
Depending upon the station,
department.
That's why it's a little more, it's a little complicated here and there.
So it's not necessarily a cost savings. It's costing some VFD some revenue, and that can be an issue in certain areas.
Well, I'm just saying that y'all,
So we'll be looking to
you're
the
liable for
commissioners.
stepping up to it.
We're looking to the commissioners to figure out how to refund that $10,600.
We'll make it up.
So maybe the hospital would be generous enough to give us that.
Since you brought up that four-letter word called cost, we, you know, at this point in time, obviously with the, and understandably so, you know, the next question with our proposal, with the product that we're proposing to you will be, what is this project what's this project gonna cost? You know, in terms of for your guidance to us, at this point in time, you know, we've run some costing information. But I would invite, you know, Jeff and Tim to chime in here as they.
I've got a scheduled appointment with the folks from CMS tomorrow to talk about this. What I believe is gonna happen is they'll take these performance standards back. They're gonna tell us what they need between now and July 1 to achieve those benchmarks. And then the remainder of it, except for maybe some of the capital discussion, will come in the next budget cycle with some estimate now, kind of, so we can start planning toward it. I think that's the way we set it up during the benchmarks discussion. It's really how do we get from here to July 1 and to get all that squared away, and then the 2016 year as part of the discussion for the budget. You follow me? And we have a call tomorrow to talk about that in just more detail.
Well, that's interesting, because I find that, you know, it's gonna be it's gonna be difficult for us. I mean, we kinda need to understand the cost side of it, and my intentions were that we would put together a group that, you know, the final recommendation out of this group needs to take place on the 17th of November. So we had a week set aside to work through the cost, and so.
If I'm premature with that
Yeah,
at this point in time, then
Yeah.
you know, I'll defer to that.
I certainly think that that's a conversation and group meetings that'll happen next week will be the cost. And then I thought, and my thought was that as we worked through the cost, if we saw where we were, you know, and what was costing what, and, you know, some things may need to be adjusted in the deployment model or performance standards, and maybe we had to make amends or whatever based on cost. So, you know, we had an additional week after next that those meetings would have taken place if something was there. But we don't know what the cost will be. I know, I'm not really comfortable having cost conversations without Mike here.
I would agree with that. I mean, I can
Yeah,
tell you, we met preliminarily last night, and just, we weren't comfortable with coming to the committee with costs today, because we
Yeah.
want to, if we're gonna put a number out there, we don't want it to be
Wrong.
wrong.
Right.
So, that was the intention of
And I think
meeting
that's the-
tomorrow, is
the
just to
discussion
kind of
tomorrow is to
start
start the
preliminary
meeting.
looking hard at the numbers.
Okay. Well, then, for tomorrow, go ahead, Butch, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Jeff, you mentioned that they were coming tomorrow to tell you what they needed
This, to have the conversation to start with.
to the 15th.
My understanding, and the way that I think the process has to work, because of let's talk about the commission itself, can't bind the future commission. So, and the commissions being in year blocks, if you think of them in year blocks, although the commission on the 17th can do the contract because it doesn't necessarily have cost associated with it, or lock in a cost, like a 3-year budget or something like that, we will necessarily have to go through that budget process again in March to set the budget July 1, because this commission won't be able to set a budget on the 17th of November for July 1. So the first thing, right immediate, is determine if there is additional cost for 2015 year to be sure we get to the benchmarks we've stated. Then a little longer horizon planning to add to get to the 14 or whatever that number is going to be and what the cost of that is. So it's really a two-step thing. What I'm looking forward to try to get to is the more immediate issue of when we go back on the 17th to be able to tell the commission, this is what your immediate cost is going to be. You need additional money or you don't need additional money to achieve through July 1 what we're trying to do.
And see, I think that was the misconception. I thought that was part of what we were gonna be doing over the next 2 weeks, was looking at the cost and what they needed right now to make that recommendation. So if there needed to be an adjustment made to our deployment model or whatever, that should come from this group.
That was my understanding as well.
So if you're already meeting with them on the finance side, then we're not gonna have any knowledge of that.
Well, I'm thinking,
I mean,
our
I'm
meetings,
thinking-
it's not to the exclusion of the group, it's just
Yeah,
to
but-
work through to iron out some of the detail and the agreement on fuel cost and the agreement on vehicle purchase price.
Right.
Those kinds of components, and going through and reviewing each of the individual pieces to ensure that it meets up to what
Correct.
But I
it
think-
is on a cost basis.
I think we should put together a group out of here that would do all of that. You know, because if you look at, you know, that, I mean, that was the impression that I was under, that was part of the charge of this group.
Well, in all fairness, if you're gonna put a group together, they're still gonna need to
Yes.
meet before that
Yeah,
group is put
well,
together.
And I think, Johnny, what they're saying is that their purpose of their meeting is to make sure that we're, you know, same thing kind of what Larry did on the data side, is that,
Right.
you know, that they're agreeing on a common,
Yeah.
common denominator with regard to what
Right.
an apple is and what an orange is, and, you know, what the price is.
Well, and I would think that the cost estimate back to this group, the discussion is, if we're at 11 units and it costs X, if we go down to 10, that cost differential, or if you go up to, 12, that cost differential. I don't think at this group, we wanna sit here and talk through how many gallons of gas, what the pricing differential on pump price is, and how they pay for that, and if they use the county's fuel purchase versus their own fuel purchase program. I mean, that's the level of detail that we go through in that meeting, that, you know, be honest, it's something we do on a regular
Yeah,
basis.
and I'm familiar with that, but, you know, I do think that this group ought to have access to that. First of all, I mean, you know, it's not available to us. You know, it's not available, their budget's not available to us. You know, if you go online and you look at it, you can find, where in their annual report they put it. If you go in the county's budget, you can see what we give them. What does EMS cost? You know, you talk about transparency, you know, that budget's not readily available. You know, so what does it cost? I do believe that, you know, there's a lot of wisdom in this room, in that big group, not slighting y'all, but, you know, that maybe there are some things that they see in there that, hey, if we changed it this way, it would make this difference. You know, and I think that's it. I think, you know, if we're gonna make a recommendation on the level of service and all of that, then it's certainly tied to cost. And cost is fuel. I don't wanna sit here and figure out how much we're paying for the QT over here versus the Shell station over here. That's not what I'm interested in. But I do think that we ought to have access to what EMS costs. And right now, we don't have that.
I think to have a good deployment model, you have to have financial costs. I feel like you can't come up with a good model or a good recommendation without that cost. If you're gonna do that, then forget about costs, and I don't think we can forget about costs.
Yeah, and if we're gonna go at it with the mindset that it cost us X amount to put 11 out there, X amount to put 10 out there, X amount to put 9 out there, then, you know, I don't think we're getting the whole picture, is all I'm saying, from a cost standpoint. You know, because, I just don't believe that we can make a informed decision as a group.
Well, you made reference to setting up a committee to do that financial understanding. Can we make arrangements for Jeff to come present to that committee?
Yes.
What he's doing, and in that way we have that transparency.
I can't hardly see how in the world we would have a financial committee without them. I'm just saying.
Well, and I wasn't at all suggesting that information not be available to the group or anything.
Yeah.
What I'm suggesting is, there's a lot of tedious back and forth to get to what is the cost. Once the cost is determined, then I think then it's a discussion for the committee.
Yeah.
But to come to an agreement, because trust me, we've done this in the last year, going back and forth, it gets down to how many gallons and what the pump price we're gonna estimate is, and then what the cost per computer and maintenance agreement is, and that kind
I'm
of stuff.
very familiar with the.
You know my
with the-
process.
I'm very familiar with the fuel, calculations.
And I think we need to discuss, I know in my conversations with Mike today, you know, some of the cost estimates, he's questioning. And they need time to validate it, I think is a fair way to put it. They're scrubbing to make sure assumptions are right, and I think this committee will assist in doing that.
And certainly by all means, that, you know, once the committee's established, and, you know, we definitely have Jeff to present those things, and so cost side of the thing, I don't really want to call it a funding thing, because that's not our charge. We don't need to figure out how to fund it, we just need to figure out what it's going to cost and if we can afford it in our best estimation. So that'll take place next week is my intention, if that answers your.
It does, and I guess my question to you as the committee chairman simply is, you know, you're familiar with what we have produced here, you know, and you're scheduled to report to the commission Monday night. You know, and we're prepared to deliver our progress on this to you at the meeting tomorrow. Is there anything else that you need from this group in preparation for your meeting Monday night to the commission?
No, I'll just need whatever the presentation's gonna be tomorrow. I'd like to have a copy of that, and then of course, you know, as all the subcommittee chairs, y'all will be present at the commission meeting on Monday as well. And Tim, I don't know if you were on that list, but I think it would be a good idea if you were there Monday night.
Monday night.
County commission meeting. I think that would be reasonable. If there's questions for you, I would like to address any of the questions that are asked, and I think that's a fair assumption. we get through the presentation tomorrow, I think that'd be good.
We'll discuss, we were gonna come back with, minimum availability, what it's gonna be now. When you go 14 units, or we're gonna change it. Before you can do IFTs.
Oh,
And what I was telling him is that we talked about, initially we said 5 was the minimum. When you get down to 5 available, you have to cut off IFTs. And that was with kind of this model we are today. So we need to tell them what it's going to be this first year, and then as we add ambulances, do we need to increase that? But that can be in the budget cycle when we actually increase in that. But is 5 the right number that we need to present for?
And the reality of that is, this unit availability should take care of that.
Well, it should, but I don't want to
Because that
assume.
means that, unit availability 11, and during the day and 9 at night, 90% of the time. That means we'll have 11 units during the day, 90% of the time available.
But you still have to have that cutoff.
Are you referring to a cutoff for non-emergent calls? Is that what you're referring to?
Non-emergency.
IFTs.
Yeah, non-emergency
Facility
IFTs.
transfer, yeah.
And we talked about it earlier.
Mhm.
And so I thought we agreed at 5 the other time, but I just want to finalize it.
We did.
Let me just clarify something though. If we say the minimum's 5,
Mm-hmm.
that we will allow to be done, but we allow currently for them to drop down to 7 units, we're saying we're gonna leave 2 units available for emergency calls
No,
at night?
no. Oh, in other words, when you get down to 5 units, you can't transfer.
Okay.
You can't
Two
do an
transfer.
IFT.
2 for IFTs.
Now, if you've got somebody in the middle of a heart attack or a stroke that needs to be transported from one hospital to the other, that's a different animal. That's a
That's
911
completely
call.
What time is that Monday night?
7 o'clock.
6:45.
We'll mark you as a special guest.
Please don't do that.
You think that seat's hot?
Feel the love.
We got you back, buddy. We'll be right behind you. Okay.
Somewhere back there.
Mr. Chairman, anything else from this group that I think we have completed our mandate at this point in time?
I'd just like to say I appreciate all your effort. I know this has been a challenging few weeks, so I certainly appreciate the commitment and the effort of the group to come back with a workable plan and on all sides. From the EMS standpoint and from a county standpoint, it's very workable. So I'd just like to say I appreciate that. Look forward to seeing y'all tomorrow.
And again, sir.
Mr. Chair, what about, do we need to meet next week or not, or we have date, we don't have date set up? Is there a reason for us to meet next week?
You'll be meeting Mr. Plowler, but it may not be with this group, but I'll set you up some meetings.
He'll find something for you to
Depends
do.
on where it's at.
But in all candor, Butch, I think at this point in time, pending, the reception of, we'll report tomorrow to the general meeting. If in fact we do need to set a meeting next week, we'll still be within the window that we can get a Tuesday meeting in. And
After tomorrow.
yeah,
Right.
We may need to tomorrow set some tentative
Yeah,
financial group meetings,
Yes.
because we can cancel due to lack of quorum if we have to.
But, I think based upon what comes out of the big committee meeting tomorrow will determine whether you guys need to meet again next week or not. So I wouldn't schedule anything until after that.
But in light of that, in finishing everything up, I just want to say thank you to all of you. I appreciate your participation. I know we kind of ran the rabbit around the tree there at the beginning, but I think that was necessary for all of us to get spun up on the detail of what is obviously an intricate and complex issue. I appreciate your forthrightness. I appreciate your willing to say what's on your mind. And I think that, not to rob corporate speak, but I think that we, this was a great example of synergy in action. When you get a bunch of people who are together and who decide they want to solve a problem, nothing's impossible. So, thank you for your work on that. Is there anything else from the group that we need to entertain at this meeting? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
And he'll second.
I figured Tim was gonna make it.
You beat me to it. What's that?
Thank you.
Thank you.